Welcome to Killer Women with your host, best-selling author Danielle Girard. And now, Danielle's next killer woman.
Hello, and welcome to Killer Women Podcast, a proud member of the Authors on the Air Global Network with more than 4 million listeners. I am your host, suspense author Danielle Girard, and my guest today is Allison Winn Scotch. Allison is the New York Times bestselling author of 9 novels, including Cleo McDougal Regrets Nothing, In 20 Years, and Time of My Life. She lives in Los Angeles with her family and their 2 rescue dogs, Hugo and Mr. Peanut. So cute. Welcome, Allison.
Thank you. They're outside my door because they like to sit in my office while I work, but I didn't want them in here because they'll
Yeah,
get.
that's no problem. Well, I always have one.
Oh,
This is Georgie,
hi.
and he is sometimes begging for attention while we're on the air, but
Yeah,
usually he
mine will like sit on the couch and come and go, and I was like,
yes, yeah,
I can hear
exactly.
them
This is
upstairs.
we're very pet friendly
Yeah.
on Killer Women, so you're in good company. So I loved The Insomniacs. Allison and I talked a tiny bit before we started recording. We're not going to call this really a thriller. It's very much a fabulous domestic drama, but there is a mystery. And before we dig into all the fun things about The Insomniacs, will you tell us a little bit about the book?
Sure. So it's funny, I had forgotten. So they actually changed the cover. Just
They did?
yeah, it's not that cover anymore.
Oh my gosh.
I don't have galleys with the new cover, but
That is so funny. I did
to
not
cre-
know that. Okay,
yeah, to
now
credit
I like
my
have to
oh
like
no no no, it
I
doesn't
want to
matter.
see it.
I can send it
Yeah,
to you, but
we'll everybody go look at the new cover of this book because I don't have the right one, but that is
no, no, no. I
interesting.
had forgotten until I saw that. I was like, wait, I did my brain a minute. They listened to some, or to credit my publisher, they listened to some early feedback and they were like, we want a little more warmth, like more character feel. And so they redid it. And I love the new cover as well. But
Oh, good. I
yeah,
mean,
to
this is
tell,
pretty. This isn't as like thrilling as it maybe could be, but it does give you the sense of the diner and
I think that's why they felt like it wasn't, and it didn't convey any emotion.
yeah,
And I liked it, but I'm not like a graphics
me
kind
neither,
of.
right?
I was like, yeah, seems good for me. But yeah, so they redid it. It's now like the New York skyline with like one window on. It's cool now. So, but sorry, I got sidetracked.
No,
It
yeah,
is
that's
about 4 strangers who have insomnia and they meet in the middle of the night online and they decide to um, meet in real life and try to help each other solve what's plaguing them, and then one of them goes missing. So
and I
that's
have
sort
to
of
say that the I'm going to call it a second chance romance, but I don't know what it is really. But it's that there is this dynamic between a very famous baseball player and a
yes.
very like incredibly brilliant older and I love that because I
Thank
felt
you.
like I am that of course not maybe as brilliant, but I am this really smart older person and then the fact that this sweet young very hot, very talented baseball player sort of falls for her. Anyway, I love that part of it. So that's this whole
Thank
other,
you.
and that is not even really the main, that's not at all the main story, but it is such a fabulous through line.
Thank you. Well, so what's interesting, you and I were talking a little bit before this is really my first plot-based book, where really like the mystery drives it. And it was really difficult for me to write simply because it was such a different muscle. But I was able to sort of get there partially through still the character work that like these two, well, all 4 were going through. And that developed very organically for me. Like I'm also probably around your age. And I really liked this notion of this extremely competent, um, undervalued woman who probably hasn't really gotten what she has deserved throughout her life, um, being seen by a hot
Yeah.
professional athlete. So yeah.
Yeah, it's and that's so I'm curious about your process since it's not although I want to there's so much there I want to dig into because Sybil there is this whole part of it so I'm gonna do this tangent about women because I think there's this whole thing that I think I'm watching women of a certain age explore
Mhm.
more and more, which is that we become kind of invisible. Like, you and it somehow happens like in the midst of like raising kids and maybe having some sort of career that all of a sudden you sort of like I found I emerged as an empty nester and I'm like people just like they don't see you in the same way that I feel
Yeah.
like they saw us when we were in our 30s and maybe
Yeah.
in our 40s, like suddenly. And I'm like, so I
Yeah.
love that about Sybil. Sybil, it has
Yeah.
that experience.
Yeah, I think it's something, and I'm sure you have found this as well. My girlfriends and I talk a lot about um, not just not maybe being seen as much, but that we also feel like we are in a moment in our lives where we have so much to offer, and that might be dismissed, but it's not necessarily dismissed by other women. It's just more dismissed by, like not to sound like, but patriarchal
Yeah.
societal things. And I, one thing that I really like to explore in almost all my work is this notion of really strong, undervalued women,
Yeah.
and showing the world what they still have to offer. And so Sybil was born partially, I have had insomnia, whatever. So she was born sort of me being up in the middle of the night, like, why does this woman not have like the back half of her life should look so exciting? Because that's what a lot of my friends and I, and I'm sure you and your friends are discussing. Like, this is our shot. What else can we do? What else can we offer? And so yeah, I their chemistry is definitely one of my favorite things. And I'm hearing that from readers as well, that like, you can find companionship in the randomest of places. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I think that idea that there's like so like now that we have I think for women we are generally still the primary caregiver. So when those children finally leave the nest, there is a part of us that's like, okay, now I get to focus on me and
100%.
in a whole different way. And I love it, but also it's very unmooring because we're so used to being like really structured by the limitations of, the kids and the
Yeah.
household and the husband and so it can be it can feel very sort of like, oh my God, what do I do now? So no, I do love that. And I don't not to discount the other characters because, Julian is this sort of mysterious man who's lost his wife and and has this incredible daughter and then of course our sweet young protagonist. So I'm curious to know
Yeah.
how they all emerge. Was it was sort of in your work, does one character sort of emerge and then you sort of they emerge separately, or are you
Yeah.
like there's a cluster of them and I got to figure out who they are?
So I almost always, and I don't know how this works for you, start with the one character who tends to end up being the heart of the book, and that was Sybil. It was
Yeah,
literally me at 3 o'clock in the morning trying to come up with book ideas. 'Cause I was under
yeah,
contract and they didn't want to do some others that I pitched. And I'm like, why am I not writing about this phase of life that all my other friends are up at 3 in the morning staring at the ceiling? So I really do tend to start with one character who I understand very implicitly because that makes the writing so much easier. And then you can set up the other characters who, I mean, in this book, I do think I don't know if they're all given equal weight, but they all have significant parts to play. But they do sort of orbit around that character who I understand very well. So that's how that was born. And I, when I was younger, the first thing I wanted to be in life was a professional sportscaster. So I really enjoy sports. And I've never sort of written an athlete like that. And I thought it was interesting. I often have somebody who sort of lives a bigger than life, like bigger than what's the a big life. I
yeah,
can't
yeah.
too tired to think of the what I was trying to say. And I've done actors, I've done singers, but I don't know. I think this notion of being an athlete when your body literally is the only thing that you have going for it. I'm
It's your
not the only
asset,
thing, but
right?
that is really what you're getting paid for. I just thought it was a really interesting way in to figuring out his next chapter because at a certain point, athletes have to do that as well. So,
Right. Right. And I think there is this, like, I understand also the idea of there's a part of him that just like seeks a smaller life, right? Like there's all
Yes.
these people depending on him. There's all these demands, even though of course he recognizes his privilege, right? Like, I mean,
Right.
he's basically born with strong and whatever and
Sure.
able to cultivate that arm. He's a pitcher.
Yeah.
But there is also the idea that it's a lot, right? And there are
Yeah.
moments when, especially when you have an injury that you're recovering from, like it's a lot of like, can I even do this? Do I want to do
Right.
this? What does
Right.
another life look like? And I love that feeds into that makes him very real. Um he's not just the sort of like all we see is this like incredible bravado and which he has to play that part as well. So
Yeah.
okay,
I really liked writing him. It
yeah.
was an interesting examination of um, even if you're not born with that sort of gift of like, I mean, not unlike Sybil. Okay, this has been my life. Now what?
Yeah.
Um, and I think that is a universal experience as you get, maybe 35, 40 onward.
Yeah.
So,
And then on the flip side is Betty, like who really hasn't had any life yet, right? Like she's like escaped, sort of, her family is active in a church, a
right.
very sort of like, cultist type church. And she's just, and we learn a little bit more, a little all the time about sort of that story and how
Yeah.
she's trying to just like carve out some quiet so she can have a life, right?
Yes.
And
She
then,
was one of the, so again, I'm not sure of how you work. She took the most time for me because she was so different than I was. I listened to a lot of podcasts on cults, people who had gotten out, deconstructed, um, and I found it, I mean, it's fascinating to, uh, you know, like watch TikToks and see people talking about their deconstruction. And it's so admirable the amount of like emotional and mental work they have done to really uproot this philosophy that they've had their whole lives. So I was really nervous to do that plot line because I did not want it to be disrespectful or get anything wrong about what somebody may or may not have gone through. But um, sort of to rewind a bit, I had initially written this book just as a character study, which is what I usually do, like for people who are trying to help each other. And my agent and editor were like, yeah, that's fine, but you need to add in a mystery. And so that's really where I rewrote Betty, and that became the thrust of the plot. Um, and I had such imposter syndrome writing that because it's not what I usually do, but I found it, I'm sure, like you, like once you start researching all these different ways that people live their lives, it was really, I don't know, it was illuminating. So, and I think it made me less judgmental, more open-minded. I mean, people go through stuff and are raised certain ways, and some of their beliefs aren't necessarily their fault. And I don't know, it was just an
right.
interesting, empathetic look into a world that is totally different than mine.
Which actually I think in the way the world is right now, particularly right now, it's sort of
Yeah.
important that we all understand that people come with baggage that is beyond their control that they don't even necessarily know they're hauling around.
Yes.
And so for some person to make a certain type of decision is oftentimes like it's it has to be forgivable because of the circumstances and the, conditioning that they had as children.
Exactly. And like, I'm not sure that I think a lot of people are not necessarily forgiving right now, and I would sometimes include myself in that.
Yeah.
But I do think that, listening to stories on podcasts and TikTok and documentaries, it did give me some insight into how people get where they are and how difficult it is to get out. So I really admired that about Betty. And I wanted to, again, writing strong women who maybe would not show up in anybody else's life, but they're out there and they're doing this work. So,
Right.
you
And
know,
I love that there's this sort of like she has this relationship with this brother he left the cult before she did, or the
yeah,
church before she did. And they're not exactly in touch, but they're sort of in touch. And he's this sort of touchstone for her. And there is this idea that like, and yet some of her other siblings kind of let her down. So there's this whole, there's this, and Sybil's family as well. Like you
Yeah.
know, everybody has these, you know, Zeke's the one who has this like lovely sister and parents who are like so
Yeah.
supportive of him. But most of the characters are, in my mind, sort of have the reality, which most of us have, which is that family is not always the blessing, but sometimes the burden, right?
Right.
And I, you know, I love that you do. It's a kind of incredible world building in this book because
Oh,
you have
thank you.
four different, very different characters, and we really do know them, you know, pretty in depth in a pretty in-depth way. Even Julian, who's sort of hiding, you know, some of
Yeah.
his past from the other characters, and to some extent, you know, not exactly confronting, you know, what he's been through and sort of
Right.
where he is now because of the loss of his wife. We still get such a full view of him, and they're all very different, which I think is also another thing. You know, when you write, you know? Because of course the scenes vary. Who's
Yeah.
you know, do you sort of write as you think the plot is moving forward? So you go from character to character, or do you know, try to say okay, these will be the Betty chapters and these will be the Sybil chapters?
No, I write, and this was really what became tricky for me, having never really written, a plot-based book. I mean, my books obviously have plots, but
Yeah,
there wasn't like a driver in it. And so that was, so I've always just written like, okay, new chapter, la
yeah,
da da. Okay, what happens now? And that was much harder this time. And I started over twice after about 150 pages both times, because I really was, and I know like a lot of your listeners are either thriller writers or thriller readers. It's really different. It's just so much harder. It was for me anyway, to keep reminding myself that it had to be about the momentum of the plot. So I still did write like, okay, Julian has showed up. Now it's time to see what Betty's doing. But it was tough.
yeah.
And I'm happy to say my next book is even more thriller based. And I think now that I understand how to do
Mhm.
it, it's almost easier than the character based stuff because you
Yes,
have to move from action to action.
yes,
At first, I was really grouchy, and my agent and editor, I kept being like, I can't do this. Why are you making me do this? I can't do it. And it was really the first book where I was like literally waking up in the middle of the night thinking, I can't do this. Like
yeah.
I don't know how to do it. And fortunately, they were patient with me, and I, eventually did. But it was challenging.
Yeah. Well, you do know how to do it, or you learned how to do it. I mean, I do think
Yeah,
you know, so for the very first time, you know, as I said, I have, you know, I've written 20, I think 20-ish
yeah.
books, and that I have, you know, my 17th is coming out, but it's for the first time
Yay,
ever I had
everybody
this
go buy
other.
it, pre-order it. Oh no, this will be out after it's out.
Yeah, this will
Buy
be,
it.
thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. But I, for the first time ever, I have this other idea that is completely not a thriller, which I've never done. And I feel the exact same way you do,
Yeah.
but in reverse. I am like, how do you even like without like something, you know, time clock and a dead body and the threat of somebody getting
Yeah.
hurt? Like how do you know, how do you move forward in a story? It's fun. And thankfully, it's not my primary. I have a book that's going to be due, so this is just sort of a
Right.
side project. But I understand that. I think we learn to do something a certain way as we learn to do something, like right. And I think it's really intimidating when you try to do something
Yeah.
different.
That's exactly. I was just so, as I said earlier, like I felt like I had imposter syndrome. Like I love reading thrillers. I genuinely, I was just confounded. Like, how do you do this? And then I was like, what? I'm writing about like a cultist church? Like this is so outside my comfort zone. But I think it's always like I'm super proud. Like now that it's done, I'm so proud of it. Like it was really arduous. But like I did it. And that's
Mm.
something for all writers. Like that can be the takeaway. Like, you know, you can do hard things and it's probably going to be okay.
We can do hard things. I think
Yeah.
I actually also think every book in its own way is like it for me has been a challenge in some different
Yeah.
way. And I actually feel like you said, you end up proud if you confront a new challenge, you take it on, even if you have to sort of like struggle through the obstacles of it and then you come out the other side. And I
Yeah.
want to say also the book, I mean, yes, there is a cult in this book and but actually the thing I think that's also that I love so much about the book is it's not like we're living inside the cult, right? It's not
Right.
like this isn't a cult book. It's very
No.
much a book about four strangers, right? It's very much a
Yes.
book about four humans who come from, you know, different backgrounds any more than it's like Sybil when, you know, went to med school, right?
Yeah,
And it's not really about a cult anymore than it's about like her experience, as
correct. That's just like the happens to be one character's
yeah,
background. And,
yeah,
you know, like living in a time when I think creative people or authors want to be very thoughtful about who
yeah.
they are representing and what they're writing about. I don't think that I would have, again, back to my imposter syndrome, like I'm not writing a cult book. Like I
Right.
will listen to your podcasts, I will watch your documentaries, but like that's not my, I feel like that would be like overstepping.
Well,
So,
yeah, but on the flip side of that, and I agree with you. Like this isn't a book where you're like, this is what it's like to live in a cult, because of course you never ever live in a cult. But on the flip side of it, I thankfully, I hope that's my
yeah, I know.
understanding.
No, no, no. Born and
My
raised in
understanding is
Seattle.
you've never
Actually, I
lived in a
wasn't born
cult.
in Seattle, raised in Seattle,
Yes.
like
No
normal
cult.
childhood. Yeah.
So, but on the flip side, I kind of feel like I resist the idea also that we have to sort of write what we know, because if you the way I grew up, like I don't know I mean I was like, are you kidding? Like, you know,
I totally agree with that. 100%. And I will also say that frustrates me because we're trying to write universal stories.
yeah,
I think I just mean that I didn't know enough about that world going into this. And I still don't to have written a book that is from the inside. Like I'm not
right.
writing ego.
No, I think it's a delicate balance. I
Yeah,
just push against. I do think that there is
I
this
agree
sense
with
of
you.
like, yeah, you're supposed to only write like I'm like if I only write 50 something white women, it's going to be the most boring book ever. Like
Exactly.
I
No, a
don't want to
hundred
do that.
percent. 100%. And I had Sybil for that. And
Yeah,
then I tried to make everybody else, disparate representations of the
yeah,
real world. And it's
yeah.
something that um, I look back on my earlier books, which again, I'm very proud of. They've been successful, but I do wish I had thought more in terms of like a global view of my characters. So
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. And it's a delicate line to walk.
It is. I think and I think the thing is, if you make everybody as you do, you give them some humanity, right? They have some ugly sides and some sweet sides and some, then I think that's all we can do, right? Is represent
Yes,
the
I,
best.
I
And like
totally
you said,
agree.
you did the research. It's not like you were
Yeah.
like, I'm going to write a book where one of the characters comes from a cult and I'm just going to make it up from what I think a cult should be like,
Oh my
right?
gosh. And the things I learned, I mean, again, it was expansive in like my own education. Like I don't know, I've never considered how people live and get out and deconstruct. I don't know, it was educational. I mean, and it's probably what a lot of people could use now is taking a look at worlds, lives outside of their own.
Right.
And, so anyway, yeah, it's interesting.
And it's that deconstructing part that I think is that we don't really understand sort of the what
Right.
it takes, because I think that we talked about that I think before we started recording, is the idea of like unlearning all those things
So
that you
challenging.
learn
Yes.
formatively is
So it is so admirable. And again, it's like something that I wouldn't have really thought of. Um, these people are doing, they're unlearning their entire lives.
yeah,
And, like even now I get TikToks of people who are like, I'm sorry, I didn't know, whatever. And I have such empathy for that. Like,
right,
because they didn't. They're just
right.
growing up in this silo. And I don't know, you can't blame people for how they're raised. So,
No, I know you can blame their parents, but that doesn't do us that much good.
bingo, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
That their
No,
parents are on TikTok apologizing. So, yeah.
I'm sure it's so fascinating. I mean, I'm sure you can go down the incredible rabbit hole of like,
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
Yeah.
forever and ever.
And I did, to your point about Betty's brother, I think in doing my research, a lot of times the people who do get out have somebody they love who is on the outside,
Yeah.
and it really helps them get there. So that was one thing that I had taken away from research, which is why I added that element in.
Yeah, no, it's super powerful. So, once you had sort of developed it sounds like, I mean, I don't love it for you, but I love the idea that you, you had
I didn't
two
love it for
really
me either.
big false starts with this book. Like
Yes.
have you done that with past books where you got to like that point and been like, it doesn't work?
Yes. So I have done it maybe with like two other books where I've just had to, Like I recognized that the idea was the right one, but the approach was wrong.
Hmm.
And it's obviously demoralizing to throw out. Yeah, here's actually a story. My debut, which is like 20 years old at this point, when we sold it, the first thing the editor had me do was delete the first 75 pages.
Oh,
And so, like, welcome to publishing.
yeah.
We sort of like what you write, but let's delete it all. So I think having that be my first experience, I and I'm curious where you fall on this. I really love the editing process. Like I always say, I think I can write a B+ book out of the gate, and then I need people to come in and tell me how to make it an A to an A+ book.
Right.
So I was frustrated partially because I had to delete like the first 150 pages twice with this book. Um, and because like initially my editor and agent loved it and they were like, no, we just need some, we need a mystery. So I was frustrated because I had spent obviously endless hours writing those pages. But I mean, look, at the end of the day, you want the book that's going to be like the best iteration of it. So you just have to again, like I was grouchy. Like I was not super, I mean, it wasn't unpleasant, but like I pushed back against them. But I don't know if like that's sort of part of the job is
Yeah.
to
Right. You are for hire at that point, right? I mean,
correct. Like sometimes it's just not the right approach.
right.
And so, yeah, so I did it and I'm obviously glad I did it now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was it was a rough road. And in fact, I think I say this in the acknowledgments when I turned in close to this draft and I didn't hear from my editor and agent for like a week. I was so I don't know if like angry is the right word. I was so certain they were going to call me and say you have to start over again. And I was
That's
like,
that
I don't know
week
what I'm going to do.
to
I
month
can't.
is the worst. The
Right.
waiting is the
I
worst.
was literally like saying to like my writing friends and my husband, like they're gonna call me and be like, start over. And I was like, I can't. And they actually called me and said, this was great, you did it. And it was shocking to me, partially because I was so new at this that I didn't know that I had done it. I still thought I was like stumbling my way through. And I mean, I probably was, but yeah. So
That's, I mean, it is, this business does take a lot of resilience, I mean,
yeah. Oh,
there's no free lunch in publishing at
no,
all.
no, I
Uh,
know.
well,
As
I
we were
mean,
talking about beforehand, it's not as sexy as it looks.
no, the way it turned out, and I agree. I mean, I'm also like kind of a little bit of a hot mess writer. I can't outline. I've never
No, me
successfully
either.
outlined. So I write a
Yeah.
little bit by braille, a little bit by like, fog lights in the,
Yeah.
headlights in the fog, and then hope that the editor or my agent can see sort of where was trying to get and help me get there. I mean, it's sort of like not.
100%.
It doesn't, I mean, and
Yeah.
it's incredible to think like the very first book we wrote, right? You had to write the whole thing and you had to send it out as somebody who'd never written a book and never published a book. And I think that is so intimidating because it's such a needle in the haystack to be found.
Yeah.
And I do think, people have to just like keep at it, keep at it. And obviously you can get good advice from other writers and from, but I think, it's a hard business. It's a hard business to break
Yeah.
into. It's a hard business to stay in.
Yeah. I mean, I always like say to readers, like, if you love a writer, support them. Even if it's asking, if you can't buy the book, ask your library to do it, spread the word online because I do think there's this misconception that once you publish that you're set. And I think most writers are like a bad, I don't mean bad, creatively, sales wise, 1 to 2 books away from never publishing
It's
again.
so true. Yeah, people get dropped, and these days even more. I think just
Yeah,
incredibly.
maybe yeah, exactly. So,
So,
um, yeah,
yeah, I think that's a love. Those are lovely ways to support and you don't have to necessarily buy the book if you can't, but
yeah,
getting libraries to carry it is another really fabulous way.
yeah,
So
exactly.
we will be giving away a copy of The
Nice.
Insomniacs with its beautiful new cover, which I'm gonna go and go check out immediately because I'm so curious. I did like the whole cover process is kind of my favorite thing, right?
Yeah,
When they start to design it and you're like, no, 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 no. And then you're like, oh, maybe. Like that whole
Yeah.
process is really, I think it's so fun. So,
Yeah.
but we are going to be giving away a copy of The Insomniacs either over on our Facebook page, Danielle's Killer Women, and the Killer Women group there, or on Killer Women Podcast on Instagram. So, Allison, tell our listeners where to find you. Are you on social media, which I'm sure we all hate, but are you out there? And where's your website and all those fun
I
things?
I am on social media, so I am AS Win, which was like my maiden name initials, like as Win, but it's AS Win, on both Instagram and Threads. I'm on Facebook. I really never use it, so you can find me there, but you're not going to get, I can't even remember the last time I looked at my author page there, but that's Allison Winn Scotch, and my website is Allison Winn.
Love it.
So
Okay. Well,
I'm
this
like,
is
I have multi-names all over the place, as a lot of women
Yeah,
do.
I know. The handles aren't all the same, but it
Yeah.
sounds like we can find you. I think once you can find somebody one place, then you can go and find
Yes,
them. And
yes. Instagram
obviously,
and Threads are really what I use the most.
okay. And Google, I mean,
Oh
Google's
yeah.
really good at finding everybody. So if you can't
You
find
can find me by Googling me. Yeah.
you can't find it by Googling, something's terribly wrong with the Google machine. So that's so. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us today,
Oh my
Allison.
gosh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to read your book and which will be out by the time this comes out, but thank you for having me. This was really great and I appreciate your listeners.
Thanks everyone for joining us today on Killer Women with Allison Winn Scotch. We'll see you next time. Bye.